Yeah, go ahead, Salome.
Um,
All the questions are for you today, by the way.
okay,
Mira and
okay.
me are here to have fun.
Happy to go over. So I think this is a biggest problem when you have like all the different sets of users, and then you need to manage how you interact with them, and then especially when you're trying to persuade them to use your product to begin with, which is already a challenge, right? I've seen enterprise software do it elegantly. I think again, Microsoft, and then is a good example. They have different user options, right? So like if you are to buy as an enterprise Microsoft's AI capabilities, they will walk you through how the tenant is being set up. They will give you different level access for different personas. So your legal team has one access and one view, your engineering team another.
Mm.
I think if that's the case you're describing, I don't see a way of it being done more elegantly than to create 5 separate pitch decks for each of these departments, and then one comprehensive pitch deck to the person that you're selling to show exactly that, because that level of personalization is your unique selling point. And having that is actually getting you above what other software programs are doing, which is just giving one standard component. Or second was layering, which is the gradual you gradually opening up and showing components. But again, if we talk about software enterprise software, it's so important to get that right and to not cross share information that doesn't have to be shared cross departmentally, and to store it correctly. And I think with that, it's really that focus on which segment we're targeting within the company, and showing that you can do that from technical perspective really gives you the edge when they compare other products.
There, I think the unlock is that maybe in the new world, as product manager, you're designing different UIs. So currently, if you look at SaaS products, they have a same UI with like little bit variation. But what we as maybe what you're where we are heading towards is agentic AI. If you're building agents, then you might have a configurable UI that you need, and that
Mhm.
should be configured based on the resource-based access control that you used to put for your authentication and security. You need to similarly put different design elements for different customer personas to match
Mhm.
that, which is quite means impressive. I think that's what, but the complexities goes away. Like I think we need to design different mocks, and design team need to work harder, which is really cool. And I think that is really a key there. That configurable UIs will become a thing in next 6 months. And I think as the cost of building UX or building web apps goes down, we will have the luxury of building maybe 10 different UIs for the same product with
Yeah.
different who is using. And based on resource based access control, we can load different UIs at runtime and
Mhm.
maybe make everybody happy.
Just to double click on that, how they say it here in Stanford, GSB at least, I think it's not just the UI, right? Because you can definitely create and you'll see that you're so right. Like one AI, they've built that agentic AI, one model, and then UI, it is complex, but it's a very simple exercise to do, right? We go through and then we just adapt for one user, two user, second, and third. But um it's not just that configuration that matters. I think fundamentally changing the product is what's going to support the user acquisition. So in a way, you create one model, but if you're able to tweak not just the UI, but the very user journey UX, you can tap into UX, you can see what is the most pressing challenge, because your two different personas will have two different challenges, right? You and I use ChatGPT very differently. You and I have different pain points. If ChatGPT is able to pick up on that and seamlessly integrate with each of ours mental behavior, that's not just the UI change, but the actual UX change that is so that creates your unique edge and unique selling point. So it's very interesting to see which and if companies start to adopt that, because the barrier to entry to UI changes lower than you would to just do entire product discovery for all of the user segments that you are planning to occupy.
That's great. Well, I think that multi-persona enterprise challenge is definitely something that I have come across very often. And thanks so much for going into this. I think it's just such an underexplored area, and it really makes or breaks adoption. Something that does come to mind is like, how do you design gracefully for those fail moments, if you will? So when AI is wrong, but the user doesn't abandon the product. Have you seen some great examples of that?
Yeah. So don't go necessarily for a great question too. And it's kind of something, again, we will see evolve and evolve, but not necessarily AI use is the great use case for how we do fallback, because other products fail too. And what happens if it fails, right? I've seen SaaS products that if something fails, you see a founder's photo and you see an engineer's photo, and it's just a meme, and it's funny. And then you just, the button will say, do you forgive the engineer? Should I fire them? And then it's a very sleek way to show that something has gone wrong. And then very personalized, works really good for I guess startups and companies that have less of like barriers in a way. If you're working in legal tech, you most likely won't be able to do the same way if you're just creating a regular SaaS for sales, say, right? So in that sense, try and tweak. But for regular, the copy is what matters. I've seen now people are, even though ChatGPT writes and Cloud writes, there are new job postings for like people on UI writing. So writing the actual UI that persuades. This is I think we're going to see more and more of that as a job even to emerge, because AI makes everything, blurs the kind of level of singularity, and it makes everything look very similar. So if you are able to create a copy within your UI that makes something unique, evokes kind of feelings of compassion and empathy from the user, is what you're trying to achieve ultimately. Because here it's you accepting your failure for sure, always. Not, don't just show a loading screen if there's an error, right? So like we're accepting our failure. If you can show why that happened, gives that even more transparency. And if you can make that copy even more so touching and personalizing, you will get that edge too. But I would be curious to see how more companies do it and how more creatively they do it, because as I said, like there are ways like that, and then you'll see lots of apps. If something breaks, their mask it, like Duolingo's app, they will start to cry and stuff. So different ways to evoke emotions, but ultimately that's what you're trying to get to when you're having fallback issues.
We will take
I
care of
do.
that.
And another question for you, Salome. So I do quite a bit of coaching for startup founders. And at what point do you recommend really having them prioritize design polish, right? Many of them start with that speed, right, for their MVP over that polish. And it's just that it's such a make or break it part of the experience, the design and AI aspect. And we're really not talking about it enough, like I mentioned earlier. So at what point should that design really move from nice to have to actually being a core strategy?
Yeah, I think it's like an iron triangle. You need to choose either fast or cheap or high quality. And then it's just that you're, as a founder, or the founders in general, even product managers too of larger companies, they face the same issue. I have an ick towards, I'll explain why, because the first impression matters, especially now. Like when users had in 2015, 2018, we had less apps, right? Reels were not a thing that back then. Your attention span was higher, barrier to entry was lower. Okay, sure, we can just ship and see if it works. And I think that's why it's such a widely adopted model, because then it worked. I don't believe right now, from what I see, at least from the products that we launch, if we launch something that's just founder said, let's go and launch a month after we've been building, even though it's the foundation is there, the second user does not understand something, or how do you bring them back, right? So it's I like to balance it in the way, and then I guess that will apply to founders, and hopefully this will be relevant for the cohort here. But I build early stage products too. And so the way we do that is we understand we need to launch, and to launch sooner than later is always a better prerogative, but you need to still understand what you are giving up here. So when you do that, I like to do a launch, which is like invite based, or I do a small marketing campaign with our client, and then they go through, and then they invest, it's like $500 on Facebook ads just to see the conversion that they have for the app. Then we have about 100 users that have tried the app. Some stick, some don't. We see the users using the product, and then we iterate back. It's actually part of our framework for development. That way we get very very small set of potential users. So we don't actually like shy away for those, like if you have an influx of like thousands and thousands of people signing up and then it breaks, not a good thing, right? So I guess to answer the question, it's always, I would always put design in priority, because right now design is the only thing you can differentiate on if you are building a first product, right? I mean, how do you differentiate AI that's based on the same LLM output? If you're building the same, say like, let's say you're building a contract generator for lawyers to set up LLCs. How do you differentiate? The only way you can differentiate, and both of them are based on AI, is your understanding of their actual problem and then tweaking that in design. And so doing that, I think, is what I would prioritize. And if I get a heat for that, I'm happy to delve deeper into that discussion and have a discourse on design versus technology and what should go first, engineering or design solutions and decisions.
Yeah, I think there is one thing that on the third aspect, which is like, how can we bring users, and which addresses this also the concern which somebody is raising in chat is how can you take feedback from the people whose job you are replacing? So, okay, if you're made vertical agents, okay, you're working back office agent, then there is a clerk is your power user, but he knows the more or she knows the more you use the product, the less and less they are useful to the company. And then we talked about this idea that we need to bring them in, we need to empower them. The story need not to be the replacement. The story needs to be empowerment. And first, you have to tell that story, and then you have to design that story in the product. And I give you like two examples just to ground us on where this actually applies. Some people were asking like examples. So this was, can you guys see my screen where you see yourself mostly? Great. So this is the app I created with AI Studio. AI Studio is another like this one, which is Microsoft, Google way of just doing what Lovable was doing. So you can go to build, write a prompt, and it generates a website for you. Same as what you would build on Lovable. It just that have unlimited credits today. So I use it more than Lovable or V0. But the idea is same. So you go there, you build an app. So I build my own app, which is how can I give points in this community? So how can we have a leaderboard where we can have who is leading and all. So I was just iterating on that. What I want to do is I want to change this. I want to say instead of total member, I want to say total achievers or total AI, but I can't do that. This is so natural for a person to come in and change it. And then I said, okay, but I loved like how they were bringing me here, filter by level, sort members. They gave me ways to do more, bring me in. This is what I wanted. Then I went to Lovable and I said, this is, by the way, another project we did, my son did. And I said, okay, how can I edit? And they give me this edit button. So by default, it's here, but now there is an edit button. If I click an edit button, it comes here, but I can't change it. I can't type it here. Like I can't just type because earlier they had it, but it's really challenging to implement behind the scenes, the engineering piece. So what they said is click edit, take us where you want, and then say, change it, which is available movers or movers ready, and then start live preview. And then it will show you here. And then you can go and say, okay, so it's going to change it here. You will see movers ready in a second. And then if you click OK, then it does the work. But you see the it's not right where I want it to be, but it's better than what AI Studio has. And it's the engineering challenge which is stopping us today. So my question is, we have seen all these, like there is this mix, especially in the third layer, which is, okay, I want to bring the user in. To be honest, 19% of all agents are failing today on this aspect, which is the last aspect, which is empowerment. And that's where AI story is going around threat, but not around empowerment. If we have to do it right, how should we do it? Because you see that building something like this will take 70% of my engineering effort. And why would I spend 70% of engineering and not ship like Lovable integration to cloud and storage so people can build enterprise level apps? Because that's what will give me more revenue today, right? So there is this trade-offs, and with product managers, we know that it's a game of trade-offs. Most of our audience have to make these trade-offs. And when they want to make these trade-offs, how to justify them? Is this the right trade-offs to make? Is Lovable making the right trade-off here by saying, yeah, let's make it little friction, but take it to the next level? Or we should say, stop, let's design it perfectly, because without trust, you're not going to build this forever and you can't compete.
If I would ask you a question, sorry, I'm answering a question with a question. You've been using these two products to bring your vision to life, and I actually second that. Like when I do, I actually stopped doing that for that very reason. If I have anything to build, I'll just call up my engineers, and then not everyone has that luxury to do that, right? So,
Yeah.
but the question is, say in the beginning of next year, there's a new product shippable, and then you can actually do that. You would you, and you can do anything. Would you change to them, or would you wait for Lovable to adopt their feature, which would probably follow in like a month or two?
Yeah, definitely, right? I was talking to somebody who I was helping, and I put them to AI Studio, but they wanted to edit, and they ended up using Lovable and paying them just to get that edit thing going, right? And it's not perfect, but just that one advantage there. So there is that, but it's really hard to justify behind the scenes. If I'm a product manager and if I say, hey, you know what, this feature will delay by 12 weeks because we are building this edit function and this requires a very different handling. As you saw, the whole experience is different and just all not come to life.
Yeah.
But that's another problem Lovable has. Like right now, there are just so many things they are trying to do in the way user want that they're not able to land anything because it's a small team. So it's just that trade-off. But I agree with you that there is an existential threat. Just how much user trust you and how much they can do the way they want to do it with you, your product.
This is a great example because let's take a step back. Lovable, they have a huge user base exactly for that. They've been shipping fast, even though the product may not be like as fully as you, like not matching your full expectations of like me sitting as Tony Stark and dictating to Lovable, build this whole SaaS tool for me, right? But they still work and they still have users, and it's because they started off, they had broken through that whole new industry of vibe coding, right? And them and a few other alternatives. I'm talking about if you are building your new product and you're not Lovable, and you're not part of a large FANG company, right? What do you do as a project manager? Then I think you actually, like, the chances of you being able to compete with these giants without having an edge is virtually not there. So the way for you to get that edge is to create something that they don't have. So you need to spend more time. For managers at those larger companies, though, I think these are the product discussions that you need to have, right? So Lovable users will probably still stick with you just because there are no other alternatives, or very few other alternatives that are offering that experience. But the second they appear, it will. And one thing, I had a bootcamp with Accelerator in partnership with Meta. We talked about specifically that, right? So OpenAI came out a few weeks ago and they said, we're reimagining how recruiting is done. The product is not even out there, but it's already all over in terms of the hype around it. What happens if that other tool creates, or another large company comes out and says, we're creating this substitute and we are fully reimagining the user? Because what OpenAI is claiming they will do is they will revolutionize how we perform as recruiters and as job searchers, right? So this is very powerful, and this is we're going into the product discussion in terms of like what we do strategically. Even these are the thing that as a founder, as a manager, you have to be very cautious of, because especially in those large companies, all of them are already doing something. So, and then it also seems that most of the user AI right now, it's like it's the same as blockchain. They have their set of users that know how to use blockchain, and so they use whatever the part of the industry they are. Same here, because the barrier to entry is like me trying to understand how to vibe code and what is agentic AI and how I can incorporate that. So there's like a set of users that you're going to be trying to reach out to, and I'm not saying it's like a finite number, but at this stage, you're not going to have like an influx of 30% of more users coming out of nowhere, just because it's still an adoption rate for using that product. So it's like it's a trade-off discussion. Remember the 3 pillars, they all have the balances that you need to balance. And I guess here it's about that elegancy of creating that balance as you build the product.
Yeah, I think one thing that I might cool takeaway, Salome, is that I think for all of us in the community, one is like, yes, you have great ideas, yet it was not possible before AI. You make it possible. don't care about design. It's okay. Make it possible. Go ahead, do it. Then the second thing is, okay, you made it possible. Then think about two things. How can you make it more accurate? And how can you make the design element perfect? And then your iteration should be two-dimensional, not single-dimensional. And third, of course, is how are you going to get to enterprise if you're building consumer? Or even if you're at enterprises, how are you going to make it SaaS simple for enterprises? That's maybe you go through your design pillar, or that's the third block you should start thinking on, like easing everything and making it a standard. Because the viral thing about ChatGPT, Anthropic, is that it's such a easy consumption model. Anybody anywhere can just do anything with them. That's the promise, and they deliver on that promise. Lovable, same reason, because if you want to build a web app anywhere, let me just do it for you. It's not a cursor, it's not a code editor. It's basically you tell me what to do and I will do it for you. And I'm building web apps. So just do those three things, and then hopefully that's the way out of it. One last question. Go ahead, Mira, unless
No, I was just going
Mira
to
had
say, I was just
something.
going to add to that is that like simplicity in enterprise AI is really the most difficult thing, right? Every person.
So how can we solve to a good enough design? Like, do you have resources or where you go to, like what you use for going to design? Like, I want to get like 80% awesome design without spending like hiring a lot of designers in my team. What's
Yeah.
that looks like for Salome? Or what's your suggestion to people who build their first app?
I'm not the right person to ask because I'm a design freak, right? You can tell by
Yeah.
now, and the session's name gives it away, I guess. But I really love to create design that like is memorable. And part of the reason why all those companies that you mentioned work is because you just said it yourself. The design is so simple and it's so easy to use, and it's just like you can build it out of anywhere and everywhere, right? So it's part of the marketing campaign too, but it's also part of what designers or the product managers or the product builders by themselves created when they thought about like, okay, what is the barrier? What am I doing? Because WordPress has been out there for like ages, right? And you can use any template and you can create your website. It's very easy to do. It's like, as long as you know how to operate your computer, buy a template or get a free one, you have your website, and it's going to be, even if I may, more in depth and more personalized to your business, small business that you're creating, than if you just write a small prompt like you did to Lovable, which is like in 2 sentences. Naturally, whatever you build with WordPress yourself would be better. And then the time, yes, would be probably a few more hours, but the 80%, just good enough. I don't think that like it's necessarily just good enough, as long as you understand the pain point. It's the UX research, right? As long as your researchers have done enough to understand the user journey, their mental model, and how they would go through and where is their problem, then you can kind of walk through, create the really good workflow, and then you can potentially add the nice UI components later. But without doing that exercise first, where you understand users' true intent to use the product and how they will intend and design around that, that's why, like, if you look at and again, I just tend to look at the early stage companies and the companies that are launching right now, and they're competing with those giants that you mentioned, because most of the founders, they will design, they will create, they will build, they'll have the vision. When they get to the build, they will either plateau in terms of growth or not get to growth at all, and they'll be like, pivot. So we're pivoting, right? And most of the companies are doing that. We are pivoting, the product is changing. But the truth is that the very exercise of identifying product market fit in the early stage was not there, right? So we did not do the exercise of realizing why, who, when behind the actual product. And I think that's the caveat here that I'm going with, is like, that exercise is not that hard to perform. So if we are to spend
very hard, but
I mean,
nobody does it for a reason. Nobody does it for a reason, because it's very hard and people get paid for it. But then they say we are technical and we'll write code. The PMs end up writing codes, or PM end up selling when they are supposed to figure out who, what, and where to build. Yeah, I agree with you, right? 100%, I think. And what I'm taking away is there's no silver bullet in design, and you have to think through it. And there's no one tool that you can go and use Gamma, because I've seen, like, I think all of them do the kind of wrapper work very well. But when it comes to design it, they all fail me. And then I have to find somebody to do it for me. So that's been my experience also. So people who are asking it in chat, maybe that's Salome's recommendation, that don't outsource your design. Design is basically outsourcing who and what to build for. And if you make these mistakes, or somebody else tells you, or there's a tool which tells you who and what to make for, it's going to generalize it. And if it is generalized, then it's no use to you anyways. So design is very specific, and who and what is also very specific, and you are supposed to marry them. And I think my biggest takeaway today is that humans are still needed. I just want to thank Salome a lot. Thank you for coming to our community. This is like an amazing place. We have a lot of amazing product managers, designers, engineers in the community.
Thank you.
There won't be any session next Friday because I'm traveling to Toronto. If you're in Toronto, feel free to fill the form in the community. I'm happy to host a dinner in Toronto. But next week we will come back and we will do how to build with no code and design, discover, design, and develop, creating a no-code AI PM assistant. This is the first time I'm trying to approach this hard field, which I have stayed away. I've tried to automate every other vertical but the PM vertical, and I think I'm blamed enough. So I will at least make a shot at it next Friday. But Salome, Mira, thanks a lot from everybody in the community. We are humbled to have both of you. And Mira, all the work you put behind the scenes to make these things possible is commendable. So thanks. Any last words, Salome, Mira, all yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mahesh. Thanks, Salome. It was a great session. And I'm looking forward to seeing where, this empowerment is going to go over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think we need to have a cohort, a week-long lesson just on design. And Salome, you should design it. That's my takeaway.
I'll bring my design team, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who stayed to this very end. I know it's a loaded topic. There's a lot to discuss, and I'm really thankful to be here. Mahesh, you're creating a wonderful community of people that are really thinking and are behind next best products out there. So it is a privilege and honor to be here. And thank you again. Thank you, your team. Thank you, Mira. Really excited. And please connect on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, guys. You have a great day.
Thanks, folks. Thank you for making this possible. We'll see you next Friday again.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.